Hello, welcome to Allen Baptist Church Daily Bible Study. Today, and we have been for a good while, looking at characters of the Bible in sort of alphabetical order. We're at the letter S, and today a very important character in the Bible named Samuel. Earlier, when we were going through the letter H, we talked about his mom, whom we were and so we know a little bit about the story, but I want to focus in on that guy Samuel. You find him in, of course, the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel. You also find him in 1st and 2nd Chronicles. There, he's mentioned in Psalm 99. Jeremiah mentions him, and he's mentioned in the book of Acts as to prophecies that he made and his impact on the kingdom. Also in Hebrews, in the list of heroes of the faith, Samuel is one that's listed. Not much said about him, but he is listed there. If you recall, his mother Hannah was barren, and she prayed to the Lord and said, if you give me a son, I'll dedicate him to you, a Nazirite vow for his life. And she actually took him to serve the Lord with the priest Eli, whose sons weren't very good and weren't carrying out their work the way they should as priests. And so what happened is, if you recall, when Samuel was a young man living there in the house of Eli, the Lord called out to him. And I always think of it this way because I watched a puppet show that some kids did a long time ago about the call of Samuel, and the Lord spoke to him, and the way they put it was, God said, Samuel, Samuel. And of course, Samuel thought it was Eli calling to him. He'd go and say, and Eli'd say, I didn't call you. It happened again. So finally, Eli realized that it was the Lord calling Samuel, and he said, you just say, here I am, Lord, what do you want? And so the Lord called Samuel. Now, this is a very special calling that maybe Samuel didn't realize to start with, and that is that God was going to give him a dual responsibility at a turning point in the history of Israel, God's people. Samuel was the last of what we would call the judges. Israel didn't have a king. God ruled them. They had a priest that that led in the sacrifices and things like that. But God was in charge. But every once in a while they would be oppressed. They'd call out to God, and God would send a judge who would judge the people, but also would free them from the oppression and things like that. Samuel was the last of these, last judge. But Samuel was more. He was called in the house of Eli to be a priest and to clean up the religious aspects. So he's not only judging in that he would help the people of Israel not to be oppressed, but he was judging the people of Israel as to their faithfulness to God, and he would bring them as a priest. So he was both a judge, a ruler, you could say king, but it wasn't exactly a king, but he was also a priest, but then he was more than that. He was the first of the prophets. Prophet, priest, and leader. Prophet, priest, and king. A type of somebody that would come later, Jesus of Nazareth, who would be both prophet, priest, and one day reigning king. But Samuel, very important person. Samuel is the one that said to Israel, when they begged for a king like Egypt and other nations around them, he said, you don't need a king. You need God as your leader. But yet they rebelled against that idea, and God gave Samuel the right to anoint Saul, king of Israel, and then to later anoint David, king of Israel. Very important character who was called of God from his birth to do multiple roles. You see, when you step out and listen when God calls your name, like he called Samuel, Samuel, and you listen and you follow, it's no telling what you're going to end up doing. God bless you.